The best way to listen to the best of the week is on the Relevant Radio app. Free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.
This first day of October, the Catholic Church is celebrating the memorial of St. Therese of Lisieux, the doctor of the little way. Pope Pius X calls St. Therese the greatest saint of modern times. Our Glen Lewerenz has a special guest this morning to talk about the little flower. We're joined by Father Michael Joseph Paris of St. Therese. He's a Discalced Carmelite to the province of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Going to talk a little bit about how our greatest failure can become our greatest path to holiness. Wouldn't we love to turn a tough time, a tough season in life into something that matters perhaps for eternity? Father Michael Joseph, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've recently returned from a trip to Lisieux, France, where you've gotten to learn, presumably, a little bit more about St. Therese. Talk about how St. Therese really touched you and kind of, put you on the path that you're on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I first discovered her when I was a young man, just right after kind of a reconversion to the faith. And it's probably the first spiritual book that someone gave me. It was my kind of first Catholic friend that gave me this book, her story, autobiography, Story of a Soul. And it just hit me to the core. At first I thought I can't really relate much to her. She's so different from me, so different time period. But then as I read, I just saw, no, she had something so strong in her relationship with Jesus and her confidence that God would make her a saint. And it just, spoke to my heart directly that like maybe he can do that in me too. And it just kind of has been like a source of hope for me through all my poverty and stumbles along the way. She's always been a friend that just like keeps me going and has helped me, come to my vocation and so many other things in my life.
Well, a fairly modern saint, too, that can also speak to us is like, wow, that might give us the idea that we can do this. This isn't someone from the 1600s. This is a little more recent. This is something that we can do. Even as parents, they found their way to sainthood as well. And this is something that can be done.
Yes, exactly. And I love to point that out with Saints Louis and Zélie, her parents who were just the first couple canonized together. They're not saints because of her, but she's really a saint because of them. And it just shows too, two parents who are very modern people, a working mom, all these things that they had to do and sacrifice for their kids. And look at the fruit it bore. It should give everyone hope. And they had their struggles. It wasn't like their lives were perfect by any means. And yet look what happened through their love and their sacrifice.
Now, had you been thinking about religious life before you had a particular spark that was spurred on by St. Therese? Yes, actually, I have to say, I thought about becoming a monk like right after my conversion, but that was more because I just wanted to kind of avoid, people and not have to deal with things. But very soon I saw, no, I think God was actually calling me to be a diocesan priest. And that came through St. Therese. So she helped me kind of overcome my fears and really just say, no, I'll give myself to what I think probably would cost me a lot, the life of a diocesan priest. But I was open to it because St. Therese kind of helped open me to it. I was ordained a diocesan priest and everything was great. And then I got this kind of call to Carmel, which was another part that I was not expecting that kind of brought me even closer to Therese, to kind of enter her own order. Well, we're, most familiar with, diocesan priests and maybe that path to priesthood, and not as familiar maybe as in time past with those involved in religious orders. What can you tell us about how life is different for you, in addition to some of the basic ways?
Yeah, I think the main thing is probably living in community, honestly. Like you have a community of brothers who, a lot of your time is spent with them. A lot of your energy is spent to kind of helping the community, building it up, serving the community. And so you're still doing a lot of priestly work. Like I work at a shrine. I mean, it's awesome. And there's a lot of confessions. We have masses, a lot of pilgrims come. But so much of your energy is put into like very ordinary little things of daily kind of family life, you could say, with all the joys and all the struggles that brings. Going back to Therese, that's really where so much of her own holiness was forged, in those just kind of like little moments of community life. And I guess I can just see that in a whole new way as a Carmelite, that's kind of the main, what really characterizes, I think, religious life in a different way.
Like we mentioned, with her being kind of a relatively modern saint, is a little easier for us to imagine, perhaps, as well as her youth, for someone to be, sainted after just a little more than a couple of decades on earth. That can give us hope, too.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you look back. I mean, that she was only 24 when she died, and she's a doctor of the church,
It's like, so she probably will always be the youngest doctor of the church. But it just shows too what God can work. Like when I look back when I was 24, I can't imagine having the kind of maturity that she had and just the spiritual depth and love that she came to. But it just shows that God is not limited by our categories, and that he can do great things in the young people, in the youth. Look at Blessed Carlos Acutis now, and, certain young saints that have come to the fore. It just, shows how I think God just delights in kind of using what we think are, unexpected people and situations and just transforming them.
What did you learn on your recent trip to France about St. Therese that helped you more deeply appreciate her?
Well, I think, first I learned just to accept my own limitations even more. That's her whole path is just like accepting our limitations with this infinite confidence that God loves you and is working through you. And that, I think I experienced that because of my not great French and having to survive in France without having a great, and just saying the most, kind of simple things, mistakes, and yet, seeing how God was working through that. So that was one thing. But then also, I was really impressed by the people that came to this course and that just come to Lisieux in general. Like, these are not people always that you would think would be the most pious or religious. A lot of these people, had serious problems, some of the people I met on the streets of Lisieux that were as pilgrims were, had addiction problems, struggled with homelessness at times, maybe didn't find a great place for themselves. And yet they found in Therese such a friend, and such a hope for their own path. And it just shows how she's just like a friend to everyone. And it just really struck me. And that's our call too, as Christians.
What a beautiful call, though, to be friends to everyone, to look how we can love in that little way. One of the themes we wanted to talk about today a little bit, to think about how our greatest failure can become our greatest path to holiness. Quite often it's a time of being laid up by something or knocked down by something that we think a little deeper, think, about the long game, and think even maybe about eternity. How did what St. Therese went through kind of help direct her?
I guess you could say one of her greatest failures, so to speak, was her inability to control her emotions, or at least her sensitivity when she was a young teenager and a young girl. Because of the death of her mom and other things that happened in her life, she just had a lot of vulnerability and a lot of insecurity. And she couldn't get over it, and it was so hard for her. She said she would just cry, if someone didn't appreciate her or something, and she wanted to be strong. She wanted to be this great Christian that she had in her mind. And yet she couldn't do it. She couldn't get over it herself. But her openness, because of that failure, her openness to her need for God, her absolute need, and I think that's what I remember hearing a good quote. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to discover that God is the rock at the bottom. And for Therese, that's what she really found in her emotional poverty. And then God was able to convert her and really help her overcome her sensitivity through her Christmas grace or Christmas conversion before she entered Carmel.
So much loss between the siblings, between the struggle with the loss of her parents, but yet look what the fruit of that was, ultimate sainthood for St. Therese and for her parents as well. How can that give us hope in the midst of great tragedy?
Yeah, exactly. You said it so well. It's really just seeing that, what seems for us like the end of the world, or that things are just going terribly, will be, God can transform it. God can use it all. And he does. That's the cross, right? It's the weakness of the cross, the scandal of the cross, that he uses these things in ways that we could never imagine. But we have to hope. Louis and Zélie, they were masters of hope. When their 4 little children died, early because of disease and different things, they never lost that hope that God was there, that he was working. And it kind of opens the door. It makes it possible for his transforming love to work, and to make people saints in the midst of these tragedies, in the midst of these, what seem like, very difficult moments.
Father, does it help us to look back at a situation like that of St. Therese when we live in a society where we don't face often as much hardship and we're used to getting comfort easily and quickly at our fingertips and get really mad if, suddenly our cell signal isn't as good as we had hoped it was, even if there's no physical problems. But yet dealing with real tragedy, does it help us to look at someone persevering through that, to give us hope when we get those little nicks and dings in our comfortable life today?
I think so, because the thing with St. Therese was that it wasn't the things themselves. It was the love, the attitude of faith, hope, and love, behind these things. So whatever the thing is, that's the great news. It's it could be, losing your cell phone signal, stubbing your toe, having
having to deal with a difficult person in your day, whatever it is, it's those normal things that demand so much of us, whatever they are, whatever time we're in. And so every little thing of our day can be an opportunity for us to express our love, for us to kind of trust that God is working, when we don't always see it. And even if it's just a little discomfort or something small, but it can take on such weight if we do it for God.
Father, you're immersed in the religious life and you have a great joy about you. Do you realize how in our modern society, just being someone who is joyful really speaks to something different going on in our day and age where the common currency is, sarcastic at best and just unrelentingly negative at worst?
Yes, that's part of the paradox too, is like the joy that comes just from being in the Lord's presence and trying to struggle too. I mean, joy really comes through the cross. So it's I think, at least for me, it's my own kind of inner work with my own weaknesses and poverty that has helped lead me to joy, because it's like, what else do I have but God? And I think, for the modern world, we do need that. We do need to see we can find joy, even if our lives aren't perfect. We can still rejoice.
The Story of a Soul, the autobiography of St. Therese of Lisieux, can be some great spiritual reading. What would be some of the highlights that we ought to take away from a little bit of time in those pages? Yeah,
I think the first thing is just to see God working in her family, is one thing. To see her origins, that how powerful, God was already preparing her through her family. The next thing, too, would be through her loss, her separations. Like, you think of when she had this strange sickness and everyone's at the end of the rope. They didn't know what to do. And the Virgin Mary's smile, came alive for her and healed her. So I think that's another thing we can take away is when we're at the end of our rope, we think we have, we don't have any other hope. Our Lady is there smiling at us and encouraging us to keep going. So I think that's another big one. And then ultimately too, you see it especially in the middle of the book in Manuscript B, where it's her discovery that God wants her to embrace her own littleness as her path to him. That it's not about doing the deeds of all the great saints that's going to attract God to us. It's acknowledging our need for God, our blind hope, she says, in his mercy that will bring God into our souls and will make us into great saints. And I think if we can take that out of her writings, we've been able to embrace her path.
Good for us to know, too, as we search for meaning and purpose in life, that it can be right in front of us. Like you said, in the little things. It doesn't have to be a great trip or to give our life over to living overseas in a jungle somewhere. The people are called to do that, which is a beautiful thing. But even if we might do that someday, we can start right now where we're at.
Yes, exactly. And that's sometimes those things can be an escape. We have these ideals of what I'd want to do in the future, or what, if I could only be in this spot, then I could do these great things. And it's no, all we have is right now. Like you said, this is the moment. And God in his providence allows everything that happens to us, every part of our life, our state in life, and so that's where he is. And we don't have to be afraid or think oh, I can't do it now, or I'm not holy enough. Always open yourself in prayer. Always open yourself to his love, regardless of how you feel. And you can do great things right here and now. And I think, we need to be reminded of that message, that it's all we have is right now in these moments to live for God and to love him as he calls us to.
Some great thoughts for us to help appreciate St. Therese of Lisieux today on her feast day. Thank you so much, Father Michael Joseph, and continued blessings on your good work as well.
This entire episode of Morning Air is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today, and thanks for listening.